This is why Buddha said that the world is suffering, because the instant that I have a desire, I must have an attending image. The image ultimately is attachment to what it seeks, dependency then upon what is sought after and the self involved, and that consciousness attracts attack.
That was Guy Finley, and I'm your host, Martin John, and you're listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, where we address topics you'll face while on a journey to recovering yourself. This podcast is all about expanding the definitions and scope of how we understand both addiction and recovery. I'm interested in doing this so everyone has an opportunity to recover themselves. This way, no matter where you are on that journey, there is a place for you here. Guy is the founder and director of Life of Learning Foundation, which is a nonprofit center for spiritual discovery located in Southern Oregon. He's a best-selling author with over 45 books and audio albums, all about different aspects of self-realization. I wanted to talk to Guy because such a big part of recovering our whole selves, my work, lies in not being fooled into believing those around us that want to simply categorize us. In recovery, once things start to look a little better, we can often erroneously start to identify with that. But that's just another false identity of who we are. This is comfortable and normal, but it is not who we are. Who we are, each of us, cannot be described or summed up in any way, and my conversation with Guy gets deep into this. And at the end of this episode, there's information about how you can attend a free talk by Guy about achieving your highest spiritual possibilities. Guy, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure, Martin. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So we're going to be talking about possibilities. And I know when we were chatting, we were talking about the idea that some people, most people probably don't even know who they are. They are living lives. And at the core of everything that is recover yourself is recovering yourself, this thing that you don't even know exists. Can you give us sort of a primer on how that's even possible?
Well, I like nice, narrow questions to start our conversation with. Gosh, Martin, I guess it's pick an arrow, shoot it, and we'll go from where it lands ideally near the bullseye. To begin with, understanding that in truth, most of us come into this world and we are handed, literally immersed in a preconceived set of content about what character is, what quality is, and connected to all of that, what our possibilities are as a human being. So that for most of us, the perception is that my possibility as a human being is determined by the degree to which I succeed with what the world says it means to be someone who has realized their possibilities. Hmm. And the moment that has taken hold, and let's be quite clear, there's no escaping that. Literally, at least not until we get to a certain spiritual maturity by which we start to recognize the inherent futility in meeting life from a mindset that not only has determined what it means to be successful, but by that same determination makes me a captive of a set of limited possibilities, all of which, by the way, are intended to be the fulfillment of the promise of myself, when in fact they do exactly the opposite. I'm in a prison without knowing it, experiencing a prison life with no awareness of it other than the pain I have with the dissatisfaction, even if I accomplish what the world says I should. So this is a pretty deep, broad area we're looking at.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we come into the world this way, is what you're saying. There is every person on this planet is walking around, and and you and I are subject to this being fooled as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's something I coined a phrase many years ago. I call it divine dissatisfaction. And when you look at the lives of, at least in my eyes, the men and women who are and have proven to not just transcend the possibilities inculcated in us by our society, but going on and exploring and at least making it possible, the idea that there are innate powers, if you want to use the word, innate qualities, characteristics, that we're intended to live from, and that everything else they show us one way or another is a kind of substitute that creates this dissatisfaction. It's like the difference between a person who knows a real pearl from one who doesn't. But innately, I don't know if you remember, I'm kind of jumping around here, but there was this beautiful story about the princess and the pea. Did you ever hear that story?
Oh, yeah.
You know, for those of us who don't know it, that, you know, this woman thought her woman wasn't good enough for her son, a queen, because she wanted to prove she was a princess. So she put a pea under a mattress, and then another mattress and another mattress, and the princess, representing Sophia, wisdom, the soul, could feel that. We can feel this innate disconnection we have with who we are. And because we can feel this innate disconnection, there is an innate dissatisfaction even when we accomplish what it is that we set out to accomplish, because it may momentarily fulfill one line of time, one set of thoughts and feelings, but it does not fulfill the whole of you and I. So that the recovery of ourself begins with discovering that we've never known who ourself is. And if we don't start in the right place, there's not a chance we're going to end up with any true realization that releases us from this divine dissatisfaction.
You know, like, as you're talking, I have this picture of a Rubik's Cube. And on that Rubik's Cube, we have, 6 sides. And as a child, it was so easy for me to get one side accomplished.
Good for you, Martin.
But what this kind of reads to me is like, look, we're a Rubik's Cube, and we have the answers on the internet. We have the answers from our teachers. We have the answers from our parents. We have the answers of this physical world around us, which will help us fill in one side. But we will constantly be dissatisfied with the idea that, like, well, the other 5 sides are still messed up. But if we just show people that one side, we've accomplished something.
In a book of mine, written many years ago, it was called Apprentice of the Heart. It was my favorite book ever because it basically chronographed a very distinct period in my spiritual life. 7 years to write it, where I was being shown a host of things that I had all of my life asked to see, but that came with a certain bittersweetness to it. The book opens with this story about a young man who, traveling, comes into a town and walks into a wine shop. In the wine shop, he's surprised to see there's only one bottle of wine and one old man behind the counter who welcomes him. And the fellow says, why is there only one bottle of wine here? And the old man says, well, I'm not really at liberty to explain that to you, but you're welcome to have a taste of this wine if you like. Well, of course I'll have a taste of the wine. So the young man tastes the wine, and it has a strange reaction, and he doesn't quite know what happened, and he leaves the shop, and then he goes on his travels, and for the rest of the next 7 years, there isn't one glass of wine he has that tastes good to him. So he realizes that somehow or other, something about that wine that he had in that shop had a taste like no other, and it can't have a substitute for it. So he goes back to that town because first of all, he wants that wine. And he says to the old man, what is this wine? And the old man says to him, well, now that you've tasted it and come back, kind of a prodigal son story, only connected to wine instead of the Heavenly Father. I didn't realize that even as I was telling it. The old man says, I've come here from a distant country, far, far away, and my one responsibility, like those who are sent into this country like me, is to set up this wine shop that so people like yourself might walk in and upon tasting this wine remember that they have come from another place altogether and that they must return to it if they ever wish to have the kind of satisfaction that you now know you can't find anywhere else in any other glass of wine. So this refers to all of this knowledge we have, but knowledge is nothing. It requires a relationship between all parts of the human being, the head, the mind, the heart, and the body, to have a very distinct, integrated connection to the moment, and in that moment of integration, a direct relationship with the living now, with this other country, this other state of consciousness. And in that taste of that, which everyone who is truly an aspirant, willing to suffer the pains of themselves, they've had that taste. Now we drive ourselves mad in the pursuit of, well, what was that and where do I get it? Thinking that somehow or other it was connected to a known set of experiences, when it isn't set in any known experience. And it is the final uncovering of that a person begins to let go altogether of wanting to repeat any experience other than the work of being attentive to the moment as it is revealing the qualities and characters of that man or woman's soul. Because that's the wine, that's the relationship, and that is our highest possibility all at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a moving, like, okay, just speaking in certain terms, that's a moving target. But that's something that changes every day. That's something that, like, we as a physical being with a new experience, we're seeing the world, we're perceiving things differently all the time. Like, every day, we've never known ourselves.
Yeah.
No matter how much we think we knew ourselves yesterday, we have to, like, I believe we have to go into this space of being like, well, who am I today? And that could be so exciting.
We are born into this world the way we described. The minute we open our eyes, because we, at that stage of relationship and experience with the world around us, we are living from what in certain traditions, Judaic, the nefesh, this animal soul, in Sufi terms, the naf. I mean, all religions and spiritual paths talk about a very distinct difference that exists within a human being, where one part of us naturally is directly connected to this world. And everything about this world is connected to our well-being inseparable from the movement of creation as this world goes through perfecting its own forms. Inseparable. On the other hand, we are also the seed of something celestial, another order of life, the Ruach Adonai, the breath of the divine that we are the expression of, made in the image of God. Doesn't mean that we look like him, because if we do, we're in a lot of trouble. But that the image of God, it even refers to it, the logos. It's not a form, it's not a shape, it's not a person. It is a host of energies, a celestial body, a matrix of divine principles. That's what we are made in the image of. To understand that in the smallest way requires going through this very painful realization that I look at the world and I see a world apart from myself. Mm-hmm. I need mom to nurse. I need mom for chocolate. I need dad for money to go buy gas. I need that woman for sex. Whatever it is that I need, I see everything outside of me, including I need you to confirm me. I need someone to tell me that what this something is that happened is going to be okay. So that the whole of our consciousness is, in fact, a captive of a certain duality. That duality remains in place until the pain of being unable to feel whole, fearless, real, present is so obvious that the mind begins to ask, what's going on? I have done everything I knew to do. I have, in fact, succeeded in some ways. I have had the accomplishments. I've had someone love me. I mean, all of us can at least check one of these boxes, right?
Well, some days it's hard, but yes, I mean,
yeah.
I think that
there's no question that some of us, and this is such an interesting thing to me. Like for me, I was born into a world where I was given everything. I mean, I literally, Martin, without going into it, every box was checked before I was born. And it turned out to be a cursing and a blessing, because I realized at a certain point, what's wrong? Why am I afraid? Why am I angry? Why am I anxious when essentially everything a person could want and more has been given to me?
Right.
I just realized, and I'm not making the relationship. That's exactly what happened to Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, perfectly. He was sheltered. He had everything, but he could not put together in his mind the contradiction between all that he was given and told was true versus what he glimpsed in the world outside the kingdom, right, where there was death and disease and impermanence, and it set him off. We are set off, if we're lucky, with the gradual recognition that something isn't quite right here. Right. I'm missing an essential element of my own life. Then we go through the spiritual business of going and finding gurus and teachers and all the rest of that stuff. I did all that, only to find out that they of themselves can't really do anything for us. All they can do, if they are a true teacher, is push us away and tell us, you're looking in the wrong place. You are the answer you're looking for. I'm not it. I don't want you. A true teacher, I'm telling you, and I know it sounds like I'm saying I'm one, I'll use Mr. Howard, a teacher of mine. He used to say a true teacher holds two lamps in his hand. With one, he beckons by the light all who are seeking new understanding. And with the other hand, with the other lamp, he's pushing everyone who comes away. And that's a requirement. So that you and I, as we proceed down this path, are going through a constant process of, and you'll love this, of shooting an arrow and then going and drawing the bullseye around where it lands. Because to us, that's what it means. That's how we succeed. I explain or justify what I did after I've done it. But that's not life. Life isn't really a moving target. Rather, we are a moving, excuse the alliteration, triumph. We as human beings are already connected to the great bullseye in Native American terms, you know. Yeah. The true unity is already who and what we are. And everything about our journey is the return to the revelation that increasingly separates the wheat from the chaff, what is false, what is true, so that little by little we start to live in a new way where you can't look out at the world and feel a fear or a worry without instantaneously recognizing that you've fallen asleep. That the only way you can be afraid or worried is if some part of you is telling you you're only as valuable as what you are imagining is happening in the world. Because that's what it boils down to. You cannot get negative without negative imagination. No human being gets negative without being in a dream.
And I struggle with that regularly. You know, I struggle.
Everybody does.
Everybody does. And that's why I know there's always more work. And that's what makes it so exciting. And that's why I, you know, like keep just, you know, in AA we call it trudging. And it's not a bad thing. It's just like moving forward, just continually moving forward through something. You know, it's interesting that you talk about teachers, because this has been a big sort of bell in my life for the last couple of years. It's like, what is the role of the teacher today? And then I look out at the world and we have more and more people who are coming out as coaches and all of this sort of thing today. And it's, and you know, like, although I kind of sit in that space somehow, that's not where I want to sit. And, you know, when I work with people individually, I'm like, we only see each other 4 times. You get in, you get what you need, you get out. And the reason that I do that is because working with addiction and other stuff, I don't want to flirt
create
with
dependency.
codependency, and I don't want, there's all sorts of stuff that are just like, look, like, I'm going to be honest with you. We ain't got time to bullshit. I'm going to talk with you honestly and straightly. But with all of these courses and coaches and teachers and schooling and all of the things that we have that are promising us answers, and I'm always like wringing my hands because I'm like, no, there are no answers here. Like, you people, like, yeah, and like, what is the role of the teacher today? What are your thoughts on, like, and I don't want to kind of focus this on like, what is your response to something going on? But I guess that's kind of what I'm asking.
From a very early stage in my own development, even before I had my first best-selling book, which is called The Secret of Letting Go, I never, ever once thought of myself as being a teacher. Not once.
Yeah, I'm in that boat.
If someone asks me, I will say, well, I'm a shower. Because in order to understand, and that's everything, it is, in fact, you know, they're saying, know the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
The truth isn't some icon, it's not some image, it's not some phrase, it's not some mantra, it's not some practice, it's none of those things. But our hearts and minds, the consciousness of humanity as it is now. There is no separate human being who has a separate consciousness. Right. We are each and all the ceaseless instrument of a equally ceaseless stream of particular qualities and characteristics relative to levels of development in the greater kingdom that holds all streams, from which all streams come. That consciousness is, in fact, responsible not just for the world that we now live in and see, but for its maintenance. So that consciousness, my consciousness, let's say I'm an addict, let's say I have relationship troubles, whatever it may be, let's say I'm in pain. That consciousness is in fact responsible for the content of my experience moment to moment, so that until I actually understand that consciousness, I am contributing to my own captivity. Which means there's really nothing to do, there's only something to see. And if there's really just something to see, then the perception has to change, and no one can change my perception for me. But someone can show me where my perception is in fact inseparable from the pain that I'm in. And that's the role of the teacher. And a true teacher understands if he really is a true teacher, more people are going to run from him than run to him. Because there's no fuzzy
there's no solidity, is where it's all fuzzy.
Mr. Howard used to say that the medicine is bitter, but it heals. Yeah. And in this instance, what we're talking about is that I look out at the world, Martin, and I think that I am separate from the world I see, and that the world I see holds within it something that will change me. And that's what everyone lives from. So that consciousness actually exists to create dependency. That's its purpose, which is natural to that level, because it is the continuation of what nature requires us, just like she does the deer and the squirrels and the birds. But it is not good for me, my soul. And to unwrap that, to realize that the reason that we have the identity politics, that we have all of the hatred and violence religiously, the fanaticism connected to ideology, the indescribable amount of ineptitude and suffering produced by human beings who believe they're providing ways to bring an end to this, is all this immense unconscious system of a consciousness that quite literally doesn't know that it acts against itself. Now, I don't know if I'm going to throw this in. I hope nobody hangs up when I do. Well, people hate religion because they don't understand religion isn't what they were indoctrinated into. Right. The word religion means to reconnect, to recover yourself, to tell you the truth. So that when Christ said that you cannot serve two masters, you will love one and despise the other, what he was alluding to isn't that there's two separate masters. He was alluding to this consciousness that on one hand creates what it believes will free it from its fear, but that cannot see its fear doing the creating.
It is the source of duality. It is
Exactly.
the source of separateness.
That's exactly right. And where you have that, you have pain and suffering.
Right.
Because we as human beings, on one hand, I live here, I look out, I see the bird feeders are empty. You know, that's not duality unless I'm irritated that I have to get up and go do it, you know. But on the other hand, I live in a world where I look out and I see friends or students or my foundation flourishing or floundering, whatever it may be. And if there's a reaction to that revelation, then that's duality. As long as the reaction is not separate from the revelation. I want to make this very clear. As long as the reaction is not separate from the revelation, then the revelation holds its own intelligence and it provides the choices. Not me making a choice in order to protect or pursue something, but a choice based on intelligence that is inseparable from the whole of the movement and what it is revealing as a whole about myself and my relationship to the world around me. I know that was quite a mouthful, but that was quite accurate.
What do you mean by apart from the revelation?
I'm driving in my car. I'm getting ready to sing one of the songs. And when I turn on the radio, we've only just begun. And I hear that song. I'm sound asleep at the wheel. Oh, oh God, you know, why did he leave me? Why did she do that? Now, in the moment the song came on, it was perfect.
Right.
There's not one thing that a human being can do to change what the moment brings.
Right.
Not one thing. The illusion is that we can. That's the grand illusion, that I actually can change what just unfolded, listen, not outside of me, because whatever I perceive is unfolding within me. In fact, that is the event. The event is the relationship that this consciousness, with its conditioning and its possibilities, has with what the moment comes to show it about itself. That's the event. It is a singularity, not a duality. But that singularity is turned into a duality instantly when the reaction to the music creates the remembrance of what I lost, the rejection I feel, and the hopelessness about my future. Then the revelation is separate from the reaction. The reaction becomes the basis of my whole reality, and I'm lost in time, suffering from a nature that doesn't even exist, save for a dark, energetic memory that wants to continue itself as all things do.
So when I'm just going to recap really quick. So when we're triggered, and we decide that trigger, whether we're making the conscious decision or whether that decision is being hijacked from some traumatic experience we had in the past or whatnot, those sorts of things. Once an event can happen and we can experience that event in the present moment and just be like, okay, this is what's going on, and address it. And that's when we are connected with our, just the experience.
Yes.
Alternately, we get triggered into some other sort of, we put our blinders on and now all we can see is that breakup. All we can see is that trauma. That is a duality.
What you said is true, but we can look beneath it a little more.
Okay, please.
The reaction to any revelation.
Now, revelation, do you mean that by just experience of the world? Okay.
Any moment.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is seamlessly
happening. Yeah. Right now, this is,
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So the reaction to the revelation is an unconscious part of our consciousness that is individuated by individual experience, by our inculcation. You have different forms of basically the same things, but relative to how Martin grew up, what happened to Martin growing up. So the reaction to that revelation belongs to an order of consciousness that is not I anymore.
Right.
It belongs to who I was. It is quite literally in older Gnostic teachings, in older teaching, it quite literally is a creature. It quite literally is a formation of thought energy that dwells in the darkness of my own life. That's why Christ said, the light dwells in the darkness and the darkness comprehends it not. That darkness doesn't know itself. It is blind. But it believes it sees, because when a reaction takes place, that sense of self only knows fight or flight. It is always binary. That level of self is always binary. Do, don't do. Go, don't go. Run, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Here's the point. It isn't me. It is, if you want to use the words, who I was and what I believed and what I embraced. But this moment is showing me by the pain in the reaction that this thing isn't worthwhile keeping alive.
Right.
But in order to see it's not worth keeping alive, I have to be in the light that reveals that darkness, instead of letting the darkness pass itself off as the light and telling me what to do to escape it. The lower consciousness doesn't want to escape the lower consciousness.
Right.
Darkness doesn't want to become enlightened. This is the grand illusion, Martin, that somehow or other I really want to be a loving person. I really want to be like this. I really want to be like that. Well, be like that. Well, I'm trying. What do you mean you're trying? Well, I hate myself because I'm not loving it. See, that's an immense contradiction that eventually has to be illuminated. And I'm going to hang on that word for just a second. Lower consciousness, duality, believes in domination, fight or flight. Domination at that level of consciousness is the continuation of everything that we see on this planet, where the idea of might makes right. I will make you understand you're wrong. You are the source of my pain. Therefore, you must be punished so that you stop exhibiting what's triggering me. To recognize that might never makes right is the beginning of understanding that patience, suffering ourselves consciously, makes light. Light by which to see this thing has failed. This thing has literally failed. You can see it. And I'm not just talking about individually. If you ever study the rise and fall of civilizations, you see the same thing. Every single time, the exact same circumstances, only they're accelerating now. Yeah. You know, it used to be we'd have a 3,000 or 4,000 year period of golden era. Now we're down to, if we're lucky, 122 years before.
And that's, we get 90 days these days.
Yeah. And that's our life, Martin. God help us.
Yeah.
But to see that is God helping us.
Yeah. You know, this, you bring up a really, something that I wanted to touch on, and I wrote a little bit of a little note to remind me. I wanted to talk about the group. As the traditional teacher that we maybe had through our own development of the evolution of our consciousness, like a teacher was something that, you know, like in this world of physical things, something that we wanted. We wanted answers. We wanted solidity. We wanted things that were solid. As that is starting to evaporate as a need for our consciousness, as I see it, I don't know if you do as well, but like that's kind of how I'm seeing it. The group was something that we brought into the fold. The group being like, hey, now that we have an answer, let's get a group around that answer, and then we'll all work together. AA is one of these groups. And AA does a great job with what they do. And I also believe that at some point, and I left AA early in my sobriety just because I was like, nope, like this sort of dogma, this sort of, you know, like I don't need the other members telling me how my recovery needs to look. And we're starting to see, although like more groups are still trying to form, I always look at groups as a way as like a group can get you to another place, but at some point you always have to be ready to shed that group. And that's a new idea, I think, that's coming out. Can you talk to me about groups as you see them, and what is their importance? What is their how are they important today? What is, I don't know. Can you talk to me a little bit about groups?
Oh, Martin. First, I have to throw in a thought that will give us a solid basis for understanding our attraction to and our rejection of groups. The only thing that troubles us about any other human being, about any group, or for that matter, any moment in our life, is what we want from it. Pure and simple. I cannot be troubled by something that I don't have a fixed idea about what it is, what it does, and what it means to me that validates me as I imagine myself to be. To understand that my trouble with you or him or her or this or that, or for that matter with the world itself as it is, and I realize I step on a lot of toes with this because so many of us, just like you've said, are gravitating towards groups left or right, spiritual or not, because we're looking for a way in which we can, without doubt, know who we are and what we are against. And this is a critical idea. There is no group in this world, no political party, at least in today's world. I think it once wasn't like this. That doesn't exist because it exists to be against something else. By the very definition of being against something else, I am in a ceaseless state of resisting anything that that person group has to say or believes in. By being in a ceaseless state of resistance, I am ceaselessly cut off from learning, because you cannot resist anything and learn from it in the moment it reveals itself to you for the purpose of you transcending that limited consciousness. Such an important idea, because within it, one begins to understand, now part two, if I may, I never set out in my life to be sitting here with you. I never set out in my life to have best-selling books. I never set out in my life to live on a little mountain in an obscure part of Oregon, far, far away from my home in Beverly Hills and all of the things that I was subjected to as I grew up. I never set out for any of that. But unfailingly, over a period of time, I did do the one thing that I felt I needed to do, which was to follow what I love. That was it. And because I followed what I love, which is to understand my pain, to understand why there's hatred and conflict and why there's fear, to understand my own addictions while I was growing up, addicted to the approval of another human being. When I think back how many times I sold my soul to someone who a moment later would go sell their soul for the same thing, so that you have this circle of soul selling, none of which is being validated other than in the circle that accelerates itself, and we call that the excitement of life. I mean, you eventually think to yourself, sweet God, thank you that I didn't know I was so asleep. Now, the beauty of that, Martin, if you'll forgive me, and I'm not indicating you, that if we are not here now aware of what the lesson of the moment is giving us to experience and see about ourselves, which is never to fix anything, but to free us from a fixed understanding prior to that moment, then we're asleep. Mm-hmm. So it is an endless awakening. It is an endless rebirth. Christ was not talking about, congratulations, here's your certificate of rebirth.
Certificates, that's another thing.
It's insane. You've graduated. There is no graduation. There is just continually falling forward, basically, because we have to fall. Why? Because we meet a limitation we didn't know was there prior to the grace of a certain light that shows us, Guy, you are still looking for this. You're still afraid of that. Look, let's watch. And in that watchfulness, freedom. And it connects with the wine story, everything I was saying. So I never set out to have a group. I have probably tens of thousands of men and women around the world who, in their minds, follow me. Yeah. I'm innocent. As best I understand it. Not that there aren't always, these invisible subcurrents going on. There are. That's what awakening is forever dying to one level of consciousness and entering into that light that showed you what you could not see before. That's what the path is, right? So in that innocence, I'm not concerned with what people say or do or how they look at me. I never lie to people.
Right.
I understand that you're about to say goodbye. I want nothing to do with you. You're so negative. Why are you so harsh? You know, whatever it is. Why is there anger, which really there isn't, but why? And then the answer to that is, listen, I can't explain your pain to you. That's your job.
Yes.
Right? That's not my job to tell you why you're in pain. I can help you see the consciousness responsible for these predictable reactions and everything that follows futilely, but I can't change that. You must use your own pain to realize that within it lies possibilities beyond your own imagination. Then, if someone's still listening, they have a chance to begin this kind of honest self-examination. Back to 12 steps, but that don't belong to a program. The program is written into our DNA, man.
Yes.
It is. I'm hardwired to become a realized human being. And if I don't, then I'm failing the purpose of my own existence, to whatever extent that's true. One last comment. Never think to yourself you know what it means to be a realized human being. Because the minute that you think that, you're not only not realized, but you're asking for all kinds of hell as you compare yourself to some idiot ideology or fixed image of yourself. Now, right. I'm done.
One of the interesting things, that came to mind, I'm coming at this from the space of an addict, whatever that means.
Right.
And I look at, well, when that pain comes and we try to fit into the group, whatever that group is, society, our school, our like lunchroom group, whatever, and it doesn't feel good, we turn to the thing that's most comfortable. Some of us, it's drugs, alcohol. Some of us, it's food. Some of us, it's spirituality. Some of us, it's reading. Some of us, it's exercise. Some of us utilize things so we can escape that which is us. And we do that for a lifetime. Well, hopefully not.
No. You said to escape that which is us.
Well, that is right. Thank you. Yeah. To escape that which we have identified.
Yes. That we don't know yet. Isn't us,
right? Those things that we experience as being us because, this is me. This is just what I do. I just get mad at people when they do that. And that's part of the human experience. I stopped like over 10 years ago. I started telling people to shut the fuck up when they started talking about like human experience. I was like, that doesn't exist. We have an individual experience. And then how do we deal with that in the moment? Because that's going to change from day to day.
It is such a mishmash at this point. Imagine a woman being given a bowl of perfectly round stones within which has been dropped a pearl. And they put her in the room blindfolded with the lights out. And they say, if you can find the pearl that's priceless, it's yours. How is she going to find the priceless pearl amongst all the stones that feel just like it in the dark? She cannot. Mm-hmm. She must have light by which to discern the difference between what is false and what is real, between what is timeless and what is not. And that task falls upon each and every one of us to begin this process of realizing, an example, I have become someone in this world. I have the pearl of great price. Because to me, the pearl of great price is the perception of the world around me that I'm successful, I'm not to be messed with, and don't dare question my opinion. Mm-hmm. Because whether we see it or not, that's what we basically want. We want to be unquestioned about our own beliefs and all the rest of that. But one day, God willing, that man, that woman, is in the middle of a business meeting. My mind just flashed back. This happened to me. And someone questions your authority. and you lose your temper. And to this day, this was 35, 40 years ago. I remember leaving that meeting and thinking to myself, what in God's name just happened? Why did you put that person's feet to the fire for asking really what was just a legitimate question or not giving you what you wanted to hear? And in that moment, everything that you think is true about you and the world that you have built for yourself, if you're lucky, comes crashing down.
Yes.
Because suddenly you have found the pearl amongst the pebbles. The pebbles, you name them, image, self-love, value, productivity, all the things that the world marks as being the measure of a truly successful human being. In this world, that's true. But you and I are not here in this world to just serve this world, because if that was the case, we wouldn't suffer over anything that happens to us. It'd just be part of this world. But we have a defining, a distinction in ourselves between what is divine and what is not. And it is that distinction, that light in the darkness that doesn't know itself, that allows us to see these things. In this instance, the beautiful humiliation of seeing that I was nothing like I believed myself to be. Because if I actually had that strength, why would I tear down someone for questioning it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that follows us everywhere, right? As soon as we get triggered, we put on those blinders and we can see nothing else but exactly. That which is our, that which is attack, that's which we've perceived as attacking us.
Yes.
And then we go into this space of trying to defend, but there's nothing to defend here. and I welcome those triggers because I want to know me.
Yeah. Well, may I say that's a very rare quality, though it is not meant to be rare. To understand, like for instance, I speak, 2 or 3 times a week, online free,
mm-hmm.
To men and women all over the world. And Wednesday, I was talking about 2 words: attract, attack. Attract, attack. If we knew that there is something latent in our consciousness that literally attracts attack, then we would stop trying to defend ourselves from what we think is attacking us and instead become more interested in the unconscious nature attracting the thing that it then says it hates.
Yes.
Like any image of myself attracts attack.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
That's right.
This is why Buddha said that the world is suffering, because the instant that I have a desire, I must have an attending image. The image ultimately is attachment to what it seeks, dependency then upon what is sought after and the self involved, and that consciousness attracts attack. It is what creates karma, that believes the karma is the result of a cruel world, instead of understanding that the consciousness itself lives in a world where it never stops attracting attack, because it never stops trying to protect the image that's attracting the attack.
Right, and that's so much of that is at the core of what this idea of recovering yourself is. Because when you can start to recover yourself, you can start to see that that which is being attacked is not you at all. It exactly. is the idea that you picked up somewhere else,
and not even that you picked it up, Martin. It's just one of those features of this consciousness that is forever trying to find itself outside of itself. It is no real I at all. It is not real I at all. It is the nefesh, it is the naf, it is this lower aspect of ourself that on one hand is, it's a necessity in this world. I have to know the difference between myself and a bird feeder. Or I'm a bird brain, sorry. I'll be here all week. I need that which allows me to practically realize in the world there are places and things that need to be remembered that I need to do. That's a physical life.
Mm-hmm.
But my physical life is not my spiritual life. And if it is, which it is now by and large, then I have, instead of the best of both worlds, I have the worst of one and none of the other at all. I have a world that is constantly trying to free itself from the very conditions that it created a moment ago. I mean, if you can really see that, I decided I was going to do this and get that all in motion, because if I could just get all that to go down the road right, then downstream I will become someone who is free and safe. I'll be secure because all that's going to work out. And what I've really set in motion, even if it works out, is dependency upon an image and a sense of self derived from the emotional content in that image. Now I am dependent on conditions, people, powers, places outside of myself. And where you have dependency, it is inescapable. You have addiction to serving the image and the self that derives its identity from it. Last, everyone is an addict. There is no such thing as an unconscious human being that isn't addicted to whatever the process is that provides them their identity. That's why dying to ourself, moksha, liberation, whatever you want to call it, illumination, is the solution. Because there is no self to be addicted to. There is an addictive nature that can only discover and find, as it searches through the world, what validates its endless need to be approved, its endless need to feel free. It cannot be free because it was never a captive to begin with.
I'm going to have to listen to that again. Guy, thank you so much for your time. This was beautiful.
It is beautiful. The truth, especially when two individuals can drink from the same cup, taste the same wine, then there's nothing else needed, is there, in a moment like that? And one can feel that. Well, what if that cup is this moment? Which it is.
It is. If you want to hear more from Guy, you can, because every week he offers 2 free live streaming sessions. There you will be introduced to new resources of help and guidance as you discover within yourself the part of you that can use any condition in life to move towards a higher level of being. Every class is unique and complete, featuring an hour talk by Guy, followed by a 30-minute Q&A session. Those are on both Sundays and Wednesdays, and there are links in the description of this episode for you to register for those. On Sunday, March 21st, Guy will be presenting a special talk entitled 7 Simple Practices for Realizing Your Highest Spiritual Possibility. And I recommend this for all of you who have any sort of personal recovery program. Please rate and review this podcast and/or leave comments for this episode to help me better create helpful content. Support this show through Anchor.fm or support me and my work through Patreon, where you will get access to unedited content as well as writings and access to supporter group portrait sessions with me. I regularly host continual education workshops for professionals, but they're also open to the public, and I take a limited number of one-on-one clients every month. So contact me when you're ready to work together through martinjohn.com. If you benefit from this content, I accept financial support through Venmo at martinjohn_Garcia. Thank you for listening to the Recover Yourself podcast. And until next time, keep recovering yourself.